If you're old or young, male or female, I'm sure you've dabbled in puzzle games. They are the most popular form of casual gaming. I've seen people of all walks of life playing some kind of puzzle game on their phones while riding a subway. They are a great way to test our problem-solving abilities and visual reflexes. As we progress in a game, we yearn for more challenging puzzles to solve, and it becomes an addiction that can make it hard for us to put down the game. I'm sure we've all had that moment when we were stuck in a particular puzzle and was overcome with an obsession to clear it no matter what. That is the factor that makes puzzle games appealing. In this edition of A Chip Off the Old Pixel, we will take a look at the most popular puzzle game of all time, and that is of course Tetris. Tetris was originally developed in the former Soviet Union by Alexei Pajitnov in 1984. For this video, we will focus on the Tetris ports released for the Game Boy and the Nintendo published version for the NES, both released in 1989, as those were the most well-known versions of Tetris. The main objective of Tetris is to sort falling tetrominoes, which are figures that consist of 4 square blocks formed into different shapes, into lines on a playing field that's 20 blocks high and 10 blocks wide. In both the Nintendo and Game Boy versions of Tetris, you have a choice between 2 game modes, along with a choice of 3 musical tracks that will play throughout your game. Tetris features a soundtrack with Russian-style music that is amongst the most recognizable of any video game. We will first look at Game A, which is the standard form of Tetris where you survive for as long as you can until the blocks reach the top of the screen. Before you start the game, you can choose what level to start at, ranging from 0 to 9. The level determines the speed in which the tetrominoes fall. Tetrominoes can be moved left and right and rotated clockwise and counterclockwise so that you can fit them in gaps to potentially make multiple lines. They can still be rotated and moved even if they land on top of a block that's in the playing field. There's a brief period of time between when the tetromino touches a block in the playing field and the lock-in sound, but the amount of time decreases as you progress in the game to the point where it's not possible to do. You can press down on the controller to increase the speed of the tetromino's descent to keep things going at a fast pace and to receive a small amount of points when it lands. Point values for lines depends on your current level and the number of lines made from a single tetromino. The goal is to try to make 4-line combinations, known of course as a Tetris, as often as possible. When lines are made, all blocks from those rows disappear, and all blocks above those rows will fall until they reach the bottom of the playing field or land on a row containing blocks. Note that all blocks within a given row will stay together in the same row when they fall, even if some blocks within that row land on top of a row of blocks that have empty spaces. Those blocks on top of the empty spaces will not descend further to fill those spots, so you'll end up having floating blocks. Every time you make 10 lines, you will advance 1 level and the point values of lines made will increase, along with the speed of the tetrominoes. As they drop faster and faster, your reflexes and ability to react quickly will be certainly put to the test. I find that the real challenge of Tetris begins after level 9. If you start the game at a level higher than 0, you will initially need to make more than 10 lines to advance to the next level. For example, if you start at level 1, you'll need to make 20 lines to advance to level 2. Once you advance to that next level, you'll only need to make 10 lines each time to advance to further levels. Both the NES and Game Boy versions give you a special scene of a space shuttle taking off if your final score exceeds certain values. The higher the score, the larger the shuttle. Back in my heyday, my best score was close to 300,000 points, but these days I can't even crack 200,000. Now on to Game B. Here you have the same option as Game A in terms of level selecting, but the additional factor in Game B is that you can select a starting height ranging from 0 to 5. This will place blocks in a random layout on the field in a way which can make it difficult to make lines depending on the height and layout, along with the tetrominoes that initially fall. Here you can see the differences in height. In Game B, the objective is to make 25 lines, thus I would not recommend using a height of 0 because it provides no challenge. In this mode, I prefer to play it at level 9 height 5. At this difficulty, it usually takes me several tries to get it right. It all depends on the pattern that's laid out. In the Game Boy version, points are only awarded upon successful completion of the game. You'll receive points based on the number of single, double, triple, and Tetris combinations made, along with points for drops. The NES version awards additional bonus points based on the level and height completed. If you complete Game B at level 9, you'll be treated to a scene where you have dancers and musicians in a castle, with the NES version featuring several characters from various Nintendo series. The number of people shown depends on the height selected. In addition, if you complete Game B on level 9 height 5, you'll be treated to a scene of a large space shuttle taking off. While I can't show you this feature, the Game Boy version had a head-to-head mode using the link cable. In order to win, each player had to make 30 lines or have the other player's field filled up to the top with blocks. It was played as a best out of 7. You were able to pick a starting height like in Game B. When you made lines, additional blocks would appear on the other player's field to trip them up. I remember when we first got the Game Boy back in Christmas of 1990, I was hooked on Tetris right away. I would bring the Game Boy to school to play it during lunch when I was in junior high, which back then you had to be careful that it wouldn't get stolen. Tetris does what many classic video games did in that era, and that was provide simple gameplay that was difficult to master. It was always a competition to see who could put up the highest score. I wasn't into seeing how many lines I could complete. I don't think I knew anybody back then that could put up better scores than me. That appeal still carries on to this day. I can go to Barcade and always find someone playing Tetris, myself included. I'll pop it in my Game Boy from time to time. Aside from the gameplay, the soundtrack is amongst the most memorable in any video game, and I guarantee you'll have those tunes playing in your head after a long session. After the success of Tetris, numerous puzzle games were released that had Tetris on its mind when they were developed, many of which added their own features to give them a different feel. I enjoyed such titles like Clocks and Columns as much as Tetris. We're now going to take a look at a very obscure puzzle game that borrows heavily from Tetris, and that is Puzzled or Joy Joy Kid in Japan for the Neo Geo. I previously did a review on Puzzled, but we will revisit this game for this series. Puzzled was released in 1990 and it features one of the most bizarre storylines. There are two villages in which one consists of men and the other women. They've been waging war for years, and after all the fighting, all that remain are the children and the elderly. In an attempt to stop the fighting, the sun god erects a wall on each side of the two villages to keep them separate, along with a tower in the middle. The size of the tower blocks the sun, so both villages live in darkness. Each village sends one person, a boy named Rat and a girl named Am, into the tower to plead with the sun god to restore sunlight. The tower consists of 6 stages, with each stage containing 10 floors, so you have to make it through 60 floors. The characters ascend towards the top of the tower by hot air balloon, but unfortunately a series of blocks and other obstacles are placed in each floor to prevent them from reaching the top. The objective of Puzzled is to clear these barriers to allow safe passage of the heroes towards the top. Completion of the game requires both characters to reach the top of the tower, and since you only play with one character at a time, you'll have to go through all 60 floors twice, thus Puzzled contains a whopping 120 levels. When you start a new game, you have a choice between the two characters. Each level begins with a series of blocks surrounding the character, usually at the bottom of the screen, with additional blocks placed throughout the playing field. The size of the playing field in Puzzled is larger than Tetris. It measures 20 blocks high and 12 blocks wide. The goal is to create lines using tetrominoes to clear blocks to free the character. In order for a level to be completed, the hero has to ascend to the top of the screen once he or she is freed. The further you progress in this game, the block layouts get more complex. The tetrominoes in Puzzle, which come in the same shapes as in Tetris, can only be rotated counterclockwise, but it's something that you get used to. If you hold down, the tetrominoes drop faster, and holding left or right allows for faster movement of the tetromino in those directions. Like in Tetris, you can continue to move tetrominoes and or rotate them for a short while before they lock in place if they come in contact with the block below or if they touch the bottom of the playing field. Now comes the part where Puzzled separates itself from Tetris. Recalling what I mentioned earlier about how when lines are made in Tetris, blocks above those lines can land on top of an empty space, resulting in floating blocks. This does not apply in Puzzled. Blocks above any lines made will drop all the way to the bottom of the playing field, or until they come in contact with any blocks below. This will allow blocks to fill in any empty spaces within a given row, alongside existing blocks to form additional lines. This process can repeat itself again and again, creating a chain reaction that can clear many lines with a single tetromino. Because of this feature, you don't always have to perfectly fit tetrominoes into the blocks. There are strategies you can use to help you clear some of the tougher stages easily. For example, in a stage that has long vertical gaps, you can stack tetrominoes on top of the gaps, and when you make a line in the row with the first block above those gaps, the remaining blocks above will fall and fill in those empty spots. You'll encounter many situations where you'll be overwhelmed with blocks at the top of the screen, but all it takes is one well-placed tetromino to clear out most of the screen and free your character to complete the stage. That's the beauty of Puzzled. One thing I notice about Puzzled is that the tetrominoes don't seem to always appear in a random fashion. For example, if I'm in a level where I end up with several long vertical gaps, I'll sometimes get several eye-shaped tetrominoes in succession. Sometimes I can go long periods of time without a specific tetromino appearing. Like in Tetris, the further you advance in Puzzle, the speed of the tetrominoes increases. Within a given level, if you spend too much time on it, a hurry up alarm will sound and the speed of the tetrominoes increases along with the pace of the music. If you spend even more time in a level, the alarm will sound again and the tetrominoes will drop even faster and the musical track changes to a more dramatic tone. Within the playing field, there are a variety of blocks and obstacles that prevent our heroes moving towards the top of the tower. In just about every stage, you have various colored blocks that are destroyed with a single line. There are gold colored blocks that are destroyed once 3 lines are made with them. When the first line is made with a gold block, it begins to crack. After the second, it cracks further, and finally on the third line, it breaks. In some stages, you also have stone blocks which cannot be destroyed, but can be used along with other blocks to make lines. You have to be careful with the stone blocks because in some stages they're laid out in a way where it's possible to create empty vertical gaps between the stone and regular blocks. This prevents you from making lines, thus the stage becomes impossible to complete. There are also blocks that can regenerate. They can prevent the passing of a falling tetromino or the ascent of the character. These blocks can be destroyed but will regenerate after a few seconds. Floating mines are placed in some stages that will stun the hero for a few seconds if they come in contact with them. Once a mine is touched, it is destroyed. Finally, there are lightning rods that shoot bolts of electricity that will block the movement of the character. You have to wait for the electricity to stop before the hero can pass through. Our heroes are not entirely helpless. They can emit a ball of lightning which can destroy blocks. You have a lightning ball meter that increases every time you make a set number of lines. For every 16 lines you make, the lightning ball meter increases by 1 level as indicated by color. Once you have reached at least 1 level of the meter, you can press a button that will produce a ball of lightning surrounding the player. This will destroy any regular blocks and 1 level of a gold block within its blast radius, but it cannot destroy stone blocks. The lightning ball meter at red produces the largest blast radius and blue the smallest, with yellow in between. As for scoring, all lines are worth 100 points each. When you complete a floor, you'll receive bonus points which increase with each stage. Once you clear 10 floors within a stage, you'll meet with one of the gods who offers congratulations with some very poor English. They will then give you the key to the next stage. Sometimes they'll drop you to the bottom floor and you have to make your way back up by jumping off falling platforms. You have 60 seconds to make it back up. Once you make it back to the top, you move on to the next stage. Once you complete the 60th floor, you'll meet with the sun god and he'll ask you to wait for the other character to arrive. Yes, you heard me right. At this point, you'll start on the first floor with the other character and have to go through the 60th floor tower again. This time the levels are arranged differently along with new musical tracks. Here's a comparison. After many hours and continues, you'll reach the top of the tower again, and the Sun God will lecture both characters on being considerate towards others. He agrees to take down the walls and tower and wishes them farewell. That, my friends, concludes your journey. Puzzle can be played with 2 players, but each player's game is independent of one another. There is no versus mode, so it becomes a race to see who can make it to the top first, or reach the farthest before exhaustion kicks in, since this is a very long game. If there's any variant of Tetris that you need to try, it's Puzzled. Instead of the simplicity of making lines, you have a lot of variety in the types of block patterns you have to clear, which get more complex as you progress. You get addicted due to the challenge of some of the stages. It can be hard to put this game down once you get into it. I like that a situation can seem hopeless, but your fortunes can quickly turn around. On the other hand, there are times where it seemed impossible to complete a stage, but I kept on pushing through until I figured it out. Puzzle does have a bit of a learning curve. It took me a while to understand how to set up the blocks to form the chain reactions to clear a stage. Once I understood it, I was able to go long stretches of this game without continuing. Even an experienced player will use lots of continues to complete this game. Sometimes you will not get the right tetrominoes when you really need it, which is the reason why I sometimes fail to complete a stage. This can be really frustrating at times. Puzzled forces you to complete each stage as quickly as possible to avoid having to deal with fast tetrominoes, which adds to the already tough task of clearing out complex block patterns. When I reviewed this game before, I criticized that the game was too long, considering that this is an arcade game that would require several hours and many quarters to complete. But when playing it at home, it's more enjoyable. It took me a little over 6 hours to complete all 120 levels, and it felt like a great accomplishment. I used a memory card to save my progress so it wasn't done in one sitting. If you're playing it on an emulator, use save states. In terms of graphics and music, they're not the best that Neo Geo has to offer, but I like that there are different backgrounds and musical tracks for each stage, so I'm not stuck seeing and hearing the same thing throughout the entire game. They could have improved the two-player game by offering a head-to-head mode. Overall, Puzzled is a great representative of the puzzle genre that is worth playing. It was released for every Neo Geo platform, and outside of that, it was released for the Wii Virtual Console in Japan. Emulation is the easiest way to access this game. Puzzled is certainly a chip off the old Pixel, and now let's take a side-by-side look of Tetris and Puzzled. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, thanks for watching.